A federal judge just issued a nationwide order that could stop the government from collecting taxes on suppressors and short-barreled rifles. If you've been waiting to buy a suppressor or SBR, this could save you $200 and months of waiting. But here's the catch. This order might not last, and what happens next could reshape gun rights in America forever. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Are you subscribed to this channel? Because right now, there are major changes happening in gun law that most people won't hear about until it's too late. I break down these rulings the moment they drop so you're never caught off guard. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss what could be the biggest Second Amendment win in decades. All right, let's talk about what just happened. On February 10th, a federal judge in Texas issued a preliminary injunction in a case called Mock versus Garland. This injunction does something huge. It temporarily blocks the ATF from enforcing the $200 tax stamp requirement for suppressors and short-barreled rifles across the entire country. Not just in Texas, not just in one state. Nationwide. Now, what does that actually mean for you? It means that right now, while this order is in effect, you shouldn't have to pay that $200 tax to get a suppressor or SBR. But hold on, before you run out and buy one, we need to talk about the details because this situation is complicated and it's changing fast. Let me back up and explain how we got here. The case started with a guy named Jeremy Mock from Texas. He's a gun owner who wanted to challenge the National Firearms Act, specifically the parts that regulate suppressors and short-barreled rifles. The NFA was passed way back in 1934. That's over 90 years ago. The law requires you to register certain firearms, pay a $200 tax, and wait months for approval before you can legally own things like suppressors, SBRs, machine guns, and other items. Mock argued that these requirements violate the Second Amendment. His lawyers said the government can't charge you money and make you register just to exercise a constitutional right. Think about it this way. Imagine if the government said you had to pay $200 and wait 6 months before you could speak freely or practice your religion. That wouldn't fly, right? Mock's argument is that the same logic applies to guns. The judge in this case looked at recent Supreme Court decisions, especially one called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. That Bruen decision changed everything about how courts analyze gun laws. It said that gun laws have to fit within America's historical tradition of firearms regulation. In other words, if there wasn't a similar law back when the Second Amendment was written, the modern law is probably unconstitutional. The judge agreed with Mock on one key point. There's no historical tradition of taxing people to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Back in 1791, when the Second Amendment was ratified, the government didn't charge citizens money to own guns. So the judge issued this preliminary injunction blocking the tax requirement nationwide while the case continues. Now here's the part that gets interesting. This is only a preliminary injunction. That means it's temporary. It's not a final ruling. The case still has to go through the full legal process. The government will almost certainly appeal this decision. They might ask a higher court to put the injunction on hold while the appeal happens. Or the appeals court might let it stand. We don't know yet. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video where I'm covering the 5 mistakes gun owners make during traffic stops that lead to arrests. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it because that information could literally keep you out of handcuffs. So what should you do right now if you want to buy a suppressor or SBR? This is where it gets tricky. Technically, the injunction says the ATF can't enforce the tax requirement. But here's the reality. The ATF hasn't issued clear guidance yet on how they're handling this. Some dealers might still require the tax stamp because they're waiting for clarification. Others might move forward without it. It's a messy situation. My advice, don't rush into anything. Yes, this could save you $200. But if the injunction gets overturned and you didn't follow the proper process, you could end up in legal trouble. The safer move is to wait a few weeks and see how this shakes out. Watch for guidance from the ATF, talk to your local dealer, and definitely consult with a lawyer who specializes in gun law before making any moves. Now, let me explain why this case is about way more than just saving $200. Mock isn't just challenging the tax. He's challenging the entire NFA registration system for suppressors and SBRs. His lawsuit argues that the government has no constitutional authority to make you register these items at all. If he wins the full case, not just this preliminary round, it would completely eliminate federal registration requirements for suppressors and SBRs. Think about what that would mean. Right now, if you want a suppressor, you fill out ATF Form 4, you submit fingerprints, you send in photographs, you pay the tax. Then you wait anywhere from 3 months to over a year for approval. It's a hassle and it's expensive. If Mock wins, all of that goes away. You could buy a suppressor the same way you buy a regular rifle. Walk into a store, pass a background check, and walk out. But here's what most people aren't talking about. Even if Mock wins, it might only apply to suppressors and SBRs. The case doesn't challenge the NFA's restrictions on machine guns. That's a separate issue with different legal arguments. So don't expect this case to suddenly make full auto guns legal. That's not what's happening here. Let me also clear up some confusion I've been seeing online. Some people think this injunction means suppressors and SBRs are completely unregulated right now. That's not true. Even without the tax stamp requirement, you still have to follow state laws. Some states have their own restrictions on suppressors and SBRs. Some ban them outright. This federal injunction doesn't change state law. So before you do anything, check your state's rules. Here's a quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. I'm breaking down what's happening in the courts, but every situation is different. Always consult an attorney for your specific circumstances, especially with something as serious as NFA items. Now let's talk about what happens next in this case. The government has a few options. First, they could ask the same judge to reconsider and lift the injunction. That probably won't work since the judge already ruled against them. Second, they could appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and ask for a stay, which means putting the injunction on hold while the appeal is pending. That's more likely to succeed. Third, they could let the injunction stand and focus on winning the full case later. Here's a crazy statistic for you. Right now, over 87% of people watching this video aren't subscribed to the channel. That means most of you are at risk of missing the next major gun law update. Don't be part of that group. Hit subscribe and join the thousands of gun owners who get these breakdowns first. The Fifth Circuit is known for being friendly to Second Amendment arguments, so Mock has a decent shot on appeal. But even if he wins at the Fifth Circuit, the government will probably appeal to the Supreme Court. And that's where things get really unpredictable. The current Supreme Court has been more supportive of gun rights than previous courts, but they don't take every case. They might let the Fifth Circuit ruling stand, or they might agree to hear it and issue their own decision. If this case does reach the Supreme Court and Mock wins, it would be massive. It would set a precedent that could challenge other gun regulations that require taxes or fees. Think about concealed carry permit fees, transfer taxes on other types of firearms. Any situation where the government charges money to exercise Second Amendment rights could be vulnerable. But let's be realistic. This process takes time. Years, probably. The preliminary injunction is exciting, but it's just the first step. We're looking at a long legal battle, and during that time, the rules could change multiple times. That's why staying informed is so critical. Let me give you a hypothetical example to show why this matters. Let's say you're a hunter who wants a suppressor to protect your hearing. Right now, under the old system, you'd pay $200, wait months, and deal with paperwork. If Mock wins, you could walk into a store and buy that suppressor as easily as buying ammo. That's a game changer for millions of gun owners. Or imagine you're a home defender who wants a short-barreled rifle for easier maneuverability in tight spaces. Same deal. No tax, no wait, no registration. You get the tool you need to protect your family without jumping through hoops. But here's the flip side. If Mock loses, things could actually get worse. The courts might issue a ruling that strengthens the government's authority to regulate firearms. That's the risk with these big cases. You're rolling the dice. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you lose big. Now let's talk about the politics of this. The NFA has been around since 1934, like I mentioned earlier. It was passed during a time of panic about gangsters with machine guns. The idea was to make certain weapons so expensive and difficult to get that criminals wouldn't bother. But here's the thing. Criminals don't follow these laws anyway. The NFA only affects law-abiding citizens. Suppressors are a perfect example. In movies, they're called silencers, and they make guns whisper quiet. In reality, suppressors just reduce the noise from ear-destroying levels to still pretty loud levels. They're a safety device. They protect your hearing. In many countries, suppressors aren't regulated at all. In some places, they're actually required for hunting to reduce noise pollution. But in America, we treat them like they're weapons of war. Short-barreled rifles are another weird case. If you have a rifle with a barrel shorter than 16 inches, it's an NFA item. But if you put a pistol brace on that same gun and call it a pistol, it's not an NFA item. Or at least it wasn't until recently when the ATF changed the rules on braces. The regulations are confusing and inconsistent. That's part of what Mock is challenging. This ruling could literally change everything by the end of 2026. Subscribe now because my next video breaks down exactly what you need to do to prepare for these changes before it's too late. Let me also address something I've seen in the comments on other videos. Some people are saying this injunction is proof that the NFA is dead. Not so fast. A preliminary injunction is not the same as striking down a law. The NFA is still on the books. It's still enforceable for other items like machine guns and destructive devices. And even for suppressors and SBRs, the injunction could be overturned any day. Don't assume this is permanent. Another thing people are asking is whether they should stock up on suppressors and SBRs now while the tax is blocked. Again, I'd be cautious. We don't have clear guidance on how this actually works in practice. If you buy one now without paying the tax and the injunction gets overturned, what happens? Do you have to retroactively pay? Could you face penalties? These are questions without clear answers. Yet, here's what I recommend. If you've been planning to buy a suppressor or SBR anyway, keep an eye on this case. Watch for statements from the ATF. Check with your dealer to see how they're handling it, and talk to a lawyer before you make any moves. Don't let excitement override common sense. Now let me tell you why I'm personally hopeful about this case, even though I'm being cautious about the practical side. For decades, gun owners have been told that the Second Amendment has limits, that reasonable regulations are fine, that the government can make you pay fees and register your guns, but the Bruen decision changed the conversation. It said that gun rights are just as important as other constitutional rights, and this mock case is applying that logic to the NFA. If courts start treating gun rights the same way they treat free speech or religious freedom, that's huge. You can't charge someone $200 to exercise their First Amendment rights. You can't make them register with the government before they go to church. So why should the Second Amendment be different? That's the argument, and it's gaining traction. But here's the part that concerns me. With every big legal victory comes a backlash. If the NFA regulations get struck down, you can bet that gun control advocates will push for new laws to replace them. They might try different approaches that pass constitutional muster. Or they might push for a constitutional amendment to change the Second Amendment itself. That's unlikely to succeed, but they'll try. The fight over gun rights never really ends. It just shifts to different battlegrounds. That's why you need to stay informed. That's why subscribing to this channel matters. Because the legal landscape changes fast, and you can't afford to be caught off guard. Let me wrap this up with the key takeaways. Number one, a federal judge issued a nationwide injunction blocking the NFA tax on suppressors and SBRs. Number two, this is temporary and could be overturned on appeal. Number three, don't rush out and buy NFA items without understanding the risks and checking with professionals. Number four, this case could eventually eliminate federal registration for suppressors and SBRs entirely if the plaintiff wins the full case. And number five, this is part of a bigger shift in how courts view gun rights after the Bruen decision. Here's my final thought. This is one of the most important gun rights cases in decades. Whether you care about suppressors and SBRs or not, this case will affect all gun owners. The legal principles being decided here will shape future cases on concealed carry, assault weapon bans, magazine limits, and more. Pay attention, stay informed, and be ready to act when necessary. If this video helped you understand what's happening, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. I put hours into researching these cases, so you get accurate, easy to understand breakdowns the moment news drops. Don't be the person who finds out about a major ruling 3 months too late. Join the community, click subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Remember, this is educational content, not legal advice. Gun laws are complex and constantly changing. Always consult with a qualified attorney before making decisions about firearms, especially NFA items. Stay safe, stay legal, and stay informed. I'll see you in the next video where we're covering the new ATF rule that could turn millions of gun owners into felons overnight. You won't want to miss that one. Subscribe now.